Is it a coincidence, or is there some truth to an age-old urban legend regarding two iconic US presidents, Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy? The theory allegedly first appeared in 1964, where popular news outlets at the time pushed a story that featured an incredible list of coincidences between the two presidents, where the list includes things that happened before their presidency as well as at their assassination. The legendary list stood the test of time, where even today, people who have newly discovered the list has the same reaction today as people did so many decades ago. So what exactly are some of these startling coincidences that has so many people still freaking out? Hey everyone, my name is Sean from Facts on TV and welcome to another episode. And in this video, we'll take a look at the wild urban legends and a list of coincidences that still has people's minds spinning out of control. And with that being said, let's get right into it. But hold on, before we actually begin, I want to let you know that there's actually several variations of this list. And we tried to find a list that had most things in check, meaning that we're able to validate most of what it is that we found from credible sources. Now you can go ahead and check the description section of this video for you to be able to find some links that will bring you to what it is that we use as a source in order for us to be able to create a comprehensive list of all these coincidences. Alright, so let's get right into it. Coincidence number one. Alright, so the first set of coincidences will be pertaining to their time in public office as well as their presidency. Both presidents were elected to the United States House of Representatives in 46. Abraham Lincoln in 1846 and John F. Kennedy in 1946. And both presidents were elected to the presidency in 60, Abraham Lincoln being in 1860 and John F. Kennedy in 1960. And it continues from here. Both presidents were succeeded by Southern Democrats with the last name Johnson, born in 08. Now the president that came after Abraham Lincoln was Andrew Johnson, born in 1808, and Lyndon B. Johnson was after John F. Kennedy, and he was born in 1908. And as you go through this list, you'll see that there's a lot of things that actually happened about a century apart. Now, both presidents were concerned with African American rights, and they were very vocal about their views. Where in 1862, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and it became law in 1863, while President Kennedy presented a report to Congress on civil rights back in 1963, the same year as the famous March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where the following year would bring into law the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Alright, so if you got all that so far, let's get into the next set of coincidences. Alright, so now that we've got all that, let's get into the second set of coincidences that will deal with their assassination. Now the story gets a little crazy when you take a look at how both presidents were assassinated. Now both presidents were shot in the head. Not just being shot in the head, but they were shot in the head from behind. And they were both accompanied by another couple when they were shot. And I find it interesting that the male companion of the other couple were both injured by the assassin. And things are now going down the rabbit hole, getting a little bit more trippy. But before we continue the list of coincidences surrounding the assassination of both Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy, simply pause for a brief moment and do us a favor. Hit that like or thumbs up button on this video, smash the subscribe button, and go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section below. And this will just simply help us get our videos to more people that are searching it on YouTube and online in general. We appreciate any and every support that it is that we get, and we do not take it for granted one bit. And especially if you like the content that it is that we create on this channel. Alright, so with that being said, let's get right back into the list. So here we go. Both presidents were shot on a Friday. Abraham Lincoln on Good Friday, which was April 14th, 1865. On President Kennedy on Friday, November 22nd, 1963. Now it gets a little tricky at this part, so I'm going to try to read it exactly as I have it. So President Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln, Evelyn Lincoln, whose husband's nickname was Abe, who apparently was born 100 years after Abraham Lincoln. And Abe was also the nickname given to Abraham Lincoln. And of course, that makes sense. Anyway, it's said that Evelyn told the president not to go to Dallas. Dallas was ultimately where it is that President Kennedy was shot. Now there's part of the theory that said that President Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy, which would be wildly coincidental. However, we weren't really able to corroborate or find much resources that actually confirmed that. Else we would have it that Lincoln's secretary would have then warned him not to go into the theater in which he was then ultimately shot. And this rolls beautifully right into the next coincidence. So President Lincoln was shot in a theater called Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., where President Kennedy was shot in the car of the automotive brand called the Lincoln, made by the Ford Motor Company. Now, there were some other parts to this conspiracy theory and story that we just couldn't corroborate or find any real facts around. For example, Abraham Lincoln, before he was assassinated, was in Monroe, Maryland, where just before his assassination, apparently John F. Kennedy spent some time with Marilyn Monroe. Now, if you're familiar with the story, Marilyn Monroe had a lot of ties with President Kennedy. And there's an obvious play on words here with Monroe, Maryland, and Marilyn Monroe. However, we don't have too much evidence right now as to whether this was true or not. So if you guys have some additional information that we probably just didn't come across, go ahead and leave it in the comment section of this video. Now, this last set of coincidences are concerning the assassins, and there's quite a few of them. Now, when it comes to the assassins, John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald, they were always referred to by their three names. However, I'm not entirely sure if this is truly a coincidence, because apparently it's practice to list the first, middle, and last name of murderers and assassins in this case, so that way their names don't get mixed up with people that actually have the first and last name. There's always that middle name that is that delineating factor. So to say that that's a coincidence, I'm not entirely sure. Now, what is somewhat of a coincidence though is that both John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald, they were killed before they were able to be put on trial. And apparently both assassins have 15 letters between their first, middle, and last name. Alright, so I find this part very interesting. So apparently John Wilkes Booth ran into the Ford's Theater after he shot President Lincoln, but was then later caught in a warehouse. I found some other evidence that it wasn't actually a warehouse, but more so it was a barn. But if you really think about it, a barn is somewhat of a storehouse or a warehouse, so I guess there's some kind of similarities there. Where Lee Harvey Oswald ran from a warehouse called the Texas School Book Depository, and apparently it was also the place that he worked. And after he shot President Kennedy, he was then found and arrested in a movie theater. Now, I know from here there's probably a whole list of conspiracy theories surrounding the death of President John F. Kennedy, but we'll more likely get to some of that in another video. Wow, so this begs the question, are these just coincidences, or is there a governing power that actually has all these events align in the way in which they align? Or is it just simply one of those things where they're manipulating media and stories in order for it to look like it is a coincidence, as well as having a lot of people like myself and you watching this video who's interested in this kind of topic to have something to talk about. But after going through relatively decent fact checking, it seems like a lot of these things truly align and that they actually happen in real life. But I'll leave it up to you though. What do you think? Is this just a continued wild conspiracy theory, or is it just really a list of coincidences? And with that being said, hope you all have a great day and see you in another video.